When you're working a deal, every extra day in between meetings is so dangerous. Every day, your buyer's priorities are shifting, your competitors are trying to break into the account that you're talking to, and new initiatives from their CEO are springing up. And so the old saying is true, time really does kill all deals. But in this video, I'm going to give you 7 extremely tactical ways that you can compress your sales cycle without coming across as pushy. These are plays that I've personally used to shave weeks off of my deals. All right, so number 1 is anchor to same day next steps. Now, this one might sound a little bit crazy, but I learned it from a rep who did 519% of his number, Anthony Ferenzi over at Unify. And the strategy that he taught me is at the end of his meeting, when he's setting next steps with his customer, what most salespeople default to doing is they're meeting on a Wednesday. They'll be like, all right, well, how does next Wednesday at the same time look? Or what does next week look like for you? Most people default to setting next week, next steps. Anthony taught me to go all the way on the other end of the spectrum and suggest same day next steps. So what he'll do is at the end of his discovery call, he'll be coordinating next steps with the customer. Maybe he's setting a demo and he'll literally be like, hey, this might sound kind of crazy, but I actually have some time later today at 3 or 4. I don't know if that would be too soon. Now, most buyers are not able to take him up on that same day demo. They've got too much going on. But what happens when Anthony suggests same day next steps versus next week next steps is he anchors them to meeting sooner rather than later. And more often than not, they'll respond and be like, hey, I can't do later today, but I guess I could do tomorrow or maybe even Friday morning. And now what happens is when you meet the next day or even 2 days later as opposed to next week, what you're doing is, yeah, you're compressing your sales cycle, but you're starting to create some momentum between conversations. Compressing your sales cycle is not just about shortening the time between steps, it's about creating momentum. So number 1 is suggest same day next steps, knowing that they might not take you up on it, but as a mechanism to anchor them to meeting sooner rather than later. Number 2 is work your sales process in parallel, not sequentially. What I mean by this is usually when one of your customers is evaluating your product, they have multiple different meetings, demos, IT reviews. You're probably talking to multiple different people. And a mistake that I made when I was selling to large law firms is I would have one meeting and I would book the next meeting. And on that next meeting, I would book the next meeting. And on that next meeting, I would book the next meeting. And I would only schedule one meeting at a time. The thing is, there would be multiple different work streams or sales streams in my sales process. We would be selling to the IT department. They needed to look at our security documentation and they needed to test our integrations. I was also selling to the attorneys at the law firm. They would need to see a demo to see what their experience would be like. And one of the things that my first sales manager ever taught me is she was like, Nick, don't wait for the demo with the attorneys to be finished to schedule the meeting with the IT guy. Have your demo with the attorneys and the IT review on the same day. You don't need to wait for those things to happen because they're not dependent upon each other. So find ways to work your deals in parallel versus sequentially. Number 3 sort of goes in line with the last one around working steps in parallel and multi-threading. So this one is when you have a big group demo, call every single stakeholder before that demo. This one might sound crazy, but big group demos are often the make or break moment in deals. And a big mistake that I see new salespeople make is they'll stumble into that meeting not having spoken to a majority of the people in that room. And that is dangerous, dangerous territory. You might be super prepared on your end for the demo, but if you've got 5 people that you've never spoken to before coming in to see your product, you are in trouble and you're playing with fire. And so the play that I recommend you run is before your demo, get the attendee list from your champion or just look at the calendar and invite who's going to be on that and literally call one by one each person who's on that demo invite. And you're going to say something like, hey, Emma, I saw you're on the calendar invite for next Thursday's demo. I'm doing some prep for the meeting and I'm trying to connect with each person in advance just to get a sense of some of the make or break things that you really want to make sure that we cover in the meeting. I'm trying to get everybody's voice heard so that we use the time as efficiently as possible. And so you're going to call every single person. If they don't pick up, leave a voicemail basically saying the same thing and also email them saying basically the same thing. You'll find that probably 60-70% of people are going to respond to you. And the people that you talk to live, you're actually going to have an opportunity now to have a mini discovery call with them and figure out what they actually care about. You're going to figure out their hot button issues, and you're going to be able to almost start to sell why your product's going to help them solve what they care about. Now, when you actually get into the demo, it's no longer like, oh, these are all a bunch of strangers. I'm sort of feeling people out. It's like, oh, cool, they know Nick, you know them, and you have so much stronger rapport. You start to create many relationships with every single person in the deal. What's going on, folks? There are literally only two things that you need to nail as a salesperson if you want to make it to President's Club. The first is your ability to fill your calendar up with meetings and create new pipeline, aka prospecting. The other thing you have to nail is your ability to drive those deals to close. And since you've made it this far in the video, I've got a gift to help you do both of those things. If you use the code YouTube at 30mpc.com/courses, you'll actually get $50 off our two best courses to help you nail both the creation of pipeline and the closing of pipeline. The first course is called Cold Calls to President's Club. And in that course, we teach you what to do, what to say, and how to sound in every single part of a cold call, from your call opener to how you pitch, to how you overcome objections, to voicemails and gatekeepers and more. The second course is our discovery course, which is focused on how to sell in a way that doesn't feel like selling. And in that course, we teach you how to uncover massive 6- and 7-figure business problems that companies actually want to pay to solve. And we'll teach you the way to structure your calls. We'll teach you the questions to ask. We'll teach you how to get to the decision maker and drive timeline and make discovery something that you know how to do effortlessly. And again, if you go to 30mpc.com/courses or go to the link below and use that code YouTube, you'll get $50 off any of the courses. I will see you at President's Club. All right, so let's move on to number 4, which is the no ask executive note. So this is one that I used all the time when I was selling to law firms, where it was really, really hard for me as the sales rep to get access to the managing partner, the CEO of the law firm. And so what I would do is I would typically be having conversations with the CFO of the law firm, the COO of the law firm, and maybe some of the more junior partners. But ultimately, we needed the managing partner's blessing in order to actually sell our software. And so what we would do early in the deal is it would be sort of weird for me to directly reach out to the managing partner because I'd almost be going around my champion. So instead, what we would do is for high profile deals, we would have our CEO send a note to their managing partner, basically saying something like, hey, I just got word from my AE Nick that we're having a couple conversations with your team about potentially helping your team with some of the billing issues that your team has been dealing with. No action needed on your end, but I just wanted to say we're really excited about the opportunity to partner. And now what would happen is our CEO would establish a line of connection with their CEO, the managing partner of the law firm. And a lot of times we would get responses back from the managing partner, and my CEO would end up scheduling a meeting with their managing partner separate from me, and he would be able to sell the vision of where we were going, why we were great, without getting into like the weeds of all of the stuff I was working on with the lower level folks. And so a saying that I try to lean on all the time in sales is never win a deal alone, never lose a deal alone. Get your executives to reach out to their executives, and you'll find that that starts to compress deal cycles because you get power involved earlier. Number 5 is send mini custom demos in between meetings. So this is one, again, that I used a lot when I was selling to law firms, where we would have sometimes a week and a half or 2 weeks in between meetings, and I needed to find a way to keep momentum in between those demos. So what I would do is I would send my customer a very, very short custom filmed video using something like Vidyard or Loom of something that I knew that they cared about, that our product helped with, that we hadn't been able to cover yet on a demo and might not warrant like a full 30 or 60 minute demo. And so what I would do is I would send over an email saying something like, hey, Dave, I was giving some more thought to something that you mentioned around like attorney compensation reporting. And I actually filmed a 2.5 minute video showing some of the ways that I think you might be able to report on that in our system. We can go into this more depth in next week's demo, but I wanted to send this in between meetings just because I was thinking about you. Now, what happens here is 2 things. Thing number 1 is if this is something that they actually cared about, you almost whet their appetite and get them saying, oh, cool, like, you know what, I actually do want to go more in depth with this. And now, if you don't have a demo scheduled to do that, you have an opportunity to schedule another meeting. Again, going back to that working things in parallel part I was talking about earlier. But thing number 2, and I think this is where it's more powerful, is there's a psychological dynamic in sales where prospects will reciprocate the level of effort that they see you giving. And if I just send over like a generic, oh, here's our product page, take a look at that, prospects are like, yeah, whatever. Or if you send over just like a generic case study, they're like, whatever. whatever, like, I don't need to look at this in between meetings. But if you take something that they said they care about and you take the time to film a short custom video for them, prospects will reciprocate. They'll respond in kind, and they'll become more invested in the deal themselves. Number 6 is find a way to get in person. It is brutal sitting on Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting. Real connection with your customers obviously comes face-to-face and in person. You can share a meal together. You can actually have some back and forth riffs. You're not just sitting there staring into a tiny glowing screen for hours on end. And so I think that as a salesperson, it's on you to reach out to your customer and have you be the one to suggest the on-site. The way that I'll typically do it is one of two ways. One, if we have a substantive demo, 60 minutes or more, I'm going to suggest, hey, like, I was actually planning on flying to Seattle at some point this quarter. Do you think it'd be crazy for our team to come on site for that demo? The other way that you can get in person, honestly, even if you don't have a substantive demo set up, is like, I like to float that I was planning on going up to their city at some point in the quarter. And so I would call them or email them something like, hey, Emma, I'm doing some travel planning for the quarter ahead, and I think I'm going to make it up to Seattle at some point this year. I'm pretty sure your office is downtown. I guess, do you think it would make sense for us to get together if I do end up making the trip up? Now what you can do is, like, if they're actually invested in this deal, of course they're going to say yes. Now you have an opportunity to be like, great, like, when would you like me to come up? When would be a convenient time? So now you can get in person with them, and again, you're going to have way more substantive interaction than if you do everything remote. All right, so let's finish this thing off with number 7, which is honestly the most controversial one because it's related to pricing. It's to give them a discount in exchange for moving faster. However, there is a massive, massive caveat on this one, which is you look like a total chump if you just reach out to a customer and you're like, hey, we can give you a discount if you come aboard before the end of the month or the end of the quarter. Because that might not matter to them. They might not be able to move that fast. And now you're just like dangling a carrot in front of them they literally cannot eat. And so instead of offering a discount in exchange for moving faster, you're going to float a discount in exchange for moving faster. So listen to the nuance here. You're going to email your customer and you're going to say something like this. Hey, Mark, I just got off a meeting with my VP of sales, and she's considering rolling out some pricing incentives for folks that are able to sign a contract and come aboard before the end of the quarter. I have no idea if that would make a difference to you or not, but I wanted to check with you and see if she does end up rolling out those discounts, if that's something that we should talk about and if that timeline might work. Now, what you're doing here is you're not saying, hey, we've got a discount available for you. You're saying, hypothetically, if there were to be a discount, would you be able to move that fast? They might say no, and then great, you know that you shouldn't be discounting to get them to move faster because it won't make a difference to them. But more often than not, you're going to have customers, if they're close to being able to make a decision, say, oh, you know what? We would like to take advantage of that. Here's the things that we need to do to finish our evaluation. Let's get those scheduled. So float the discount as a mechanism to see, can they move on a faster timeline, and then accelerate through the remaining steps that you have. So to start, just pick one of these plays and find a way to work it into just one of your deals, and I promise you will start to see momentum pick up instantly. If you liked this video, you can follow the 30 Minutes to President's Club channel. We have all sorts of actionable, practical, usable best practices that will actually help you win more deals, win bigger deals, and frankly have a lot more fun selling. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.